Joara is going to be giving us a discussion and talk today on the perilous nature of Brazil, particularly what's gone on over the last year and a half or so.
Since April.
Yeah, since April. And it should be fascinating and interesting, and we all should care what goes on, especially in our neighbors in the world. But Joara has a much more personal connection to it. She is a native of Brazil. She immigrated to this country in 1984 during a period of a pretty oppressive military regime. And while here, she received her bachelor's and master's degree. Her master's is from Western Washington University in comparative politics, specifically focusing on Latin American and U.S.-Latin American relations. After getting her master's degree, she taught for, I believe it was 9 years, wasn't it, at between Western Washington University and Whatcom Community College. She joined our faculty in 2007, where she's our only political science, our only full-time political science professor, and she teaches courses in American government and international relations. She even taught some history classes for us in Latin American history. She essentially brings a lot of global issues to our very, very small regional audience, which is really important. But in addition to the classes she teaches, she's been one of the leading voices on this campus, both in engaging students, but also the institution in issues on civil rights and social justice and the environment, all really important things for both our students and our campus to hear about. So anyways, it's my pleasure, and I'm looking forward to hearing this talk today to introduce Joara Minharo.
Okay, so, sorry. Alrighty. I don't know how close I should put this. Can you guys hear me okay? Mm-hmm. Loud enough? Alrighty. Okay, guys, welcome. And I don't know, it's a very difficult to start out with what's going on in Brazil. And like Justin said, excuse me, what's going on in Brazil is really, really tectonic. It's really something that of incredible magnitude. So, but just to start, I want to make a disclaimer here, make it very, very clear that I am biased, okay? I am biased. We do have a coup d'etat. Democracy. Actually, I'd say we are no longer a democracy. Brazilian democracy has been, in effect, overthrown, and it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy for what is happening here. So, just to be sure that I believe that what happened in Brazil is a moral crisis, an outrage, and these are the times that I think everybody come in their lives that you have to take sides. And that's why I have this incredible quote by Martin Luther King, in which the hottest place in hell is reserved for those who remain neutral in times of greatest moral conflict. An individual who accepts evil without protesting against it is really operating with it. And what's happening in Brazil is evil. Is absolutely an enormous blow on Brazilian democracy, which is a huge continental country, which is very, very heartbreaking. But more importantly, it's a coup on democracy, the history of the progression of democracy in the history of humanity. So it's really a tragedy, but I think we should recover. And second, the illegitimate president of Brazil right now is a guy named Michel Temer. And the social media, the slogan to protest against this man who betrayed not only his president, he used to be the vice president of Brazil, and now he is the illegitimate president of Brazil. And Fora Temer means out Temer, which, you know, it's the slogan, so Fora Temer, out Temer, okay? So, on that note, I want to make it very clear that I am not neutral. And I take a position, a very strong position, that this is a brutal coup d'etat. Okay, so fora Timur, right? Illegitimate president of Brazil. So if you go to, Brazilians have a good sense of humor, at least that much we have, right? And so if you go to the social media, this slogan, fora Timur, is taking over the social media. So keep calm and fora Timur, or fora Timur, all right? Or fora Timur, or fora Timur, right? Or a good soccer match, fora Timur, or amor sem temer, sim, temer não. The gods of justice really, really looked away and did not bless us. But the gods of irony, gave us a great gift, which is the word temer, also in Portuguese, means to fear. So, the gods of irony gave us a great gift, right? Justice, the god of justice abandoned us, but the gods of irony gave us a great gift, which his last name is Timur. His first name is Michel Timur. So, to love, yes. To fear, no. Or you can say never, right? Fear, or you can see the double entendre there, right? Always fight, never fear, or Timur, the person, right? The illegitimate president, will never accept him. So you see the playing with the words here, right? Okay, women without any fear, or without Timur, or you could have, again, women and children without Timur, or without fear. And just for Halloween, fora Timur, the vampire, because that's exactly what he looks like. I'm not kidding. This is not, except for the body, it is not photoshopped. Well, let's start with this, okay? The great Brazilian songwriter, one of the greatest Brazilian figures, internationally known, is this great musician, Antônio Carlos Jobim. One of the creators of Bossa Nova, one of the greatest composers in Brazilian history and art. He once said, "O Brasil não é para principiantes," or Brazil is not for beginners. And consider this a warning, okay? A warning, because Brazil is not for the beginners. Or Charles de Gaulle, in 1964 visited Brazil, and when he was leaving, in an interview, he said, "Brazil is the country of the future and always will be." Brazil, another very famous quote by him, Brazil is not a country of serious men. To which I personally would add, but it is a country of one very serious woman. Of one very serious and honest woman. Dilma Vana Rousseff, the daughter of a Bulgarian immigrant and a multi-generation Brazilian mother. She was suspended from the presidency of the United States in April, presidency of Brazil. Right? President of Brazil in April 17, 2016, according to the Brazilian Constitution, the Congress voted to suspend her, and she was eventually removed from power in August 31, effectively removed from power. So, if I ask you guys, what are the images you have of Brazil? And what would that answer be? Party, carnival, what else? Amazon, beautiful, the immensity of the continent, the diversity of its natural wonders, right? What else? If I say Brazil?
Soccer.
Soccer, absolutely.
Coffee, food.
Carnival, an exuberant culture. And that is true. That is true. We do have this incredible exuberant culture, right? And
Waterfalls.
waterfalls.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Iguazu Falls, the largest waterfalls in the world, right? Nature is absolutely astounding. It's really something that I'm biased, but it is.
Poverty.
Oh, who said poverty? Who said that? Poverty, abject, extreme poverty, right? And the best soccer players in the world, right? And I'm talking about Marta, who's the best in the world. A little bragging rights here. And the Brazilian women's soccer team. There's a guys too, but they won 5 times, but I have my preferences too. Okay, so the Olympics. So what I'm trying to say here, every country, social science, we have a thing that we call, just like individuals, right? We have our public persona and we have our private persona, right? It's part of human nature. Countries are the same. Countries have this international image, persona, and its domestic image. And most countries try to guard the domestic from the international because everybody has some dirty laundry, right, at home, some, things that we're not as proud of. But that concept gains an incredible new level in Brazil, right? That international image of a happy-go-lucky carnival, samba, beaches, soccer, a very congenial, exuberant culture. That is true, but that is the culture that is carefully guarded, particularly by the elites in Brazil, right? So during the Olympics, Dilma Rousseff was already suspended, right, when the Olympics started. And during the Olympics, the impeachment removal trial was already underway, right? And so move along here. As the world was watching the Olympics, as we were in a wonderland, those two worlds, those two realms, the public and the private, were completely separate. What we saw was the Olympics, the exuberance of Brazil, right? Or the image that is sold. But the reality, while, what's his name of the swimmer? Michael Phelps breaking all of those records. People in Brazil, peaceful protesters were losing their visions. The police were shooting at them with rubber bullets, particularly journalists. It was truly, Brazil was in a state of war in the streets. That didn't match anything that you were seeing with the Olympics, right? Peaceful protesters. Rio de Janeiro, I think, a picture tells right? It's worth 1,000 words or 1,000,000 words, right? So Brazil is in the state of a military siege. Okay, military siege. It was true, and the excuse was, okay, Rio de Janeiro is a very poor, the slums, the favelas. So Brazil have all of these foreigners and athletes coming to Brazil. We need to keep them safe, right? But that was used as an excuse to really consolidate a military, a police state. So the Olympics were dishonestly used to create fear and to really crack down on any political dissent under the excuse of security and protection for the Olympics, right? And so the result was absolutely brutal reactionary police. Rubber bullets, protests. Anybody who was holding a Fora Temer sign in a Olympic venue would be severely arrested, would be beaten, arrested without a lawyer, right? So you could not hold signs during the Olympics. You could not protest during the Olympics. Why? Because it was being broadcast by the largest media conglomerate in Brazil called the Rede Globo, and they didn't want that to be broadcast. So, because Rede Globo, global TV, is really supported the coup. So that's the state. Democracy was no more, right? The state was extremely tense, violent, and we're talking about peaceful protesters. While we were watching the Olympic Games, that's what we had. And August 31st, it culminated with the removal of this woman who was... Now, it's very important to differentiate that the coup was not only against Dilma Rousseff. The coup was really against an idea, was against a project, okay? Against a vision of a new society of Brazil. Right? It was really against a democratic project that gave, finally, after 500 years plus, gave visibility to AfroBrazilians, to the poor, to Indians, to the masses, right? That were considered virtually invisible, right? So what was the accusations against her? The accusation was this pathetic lie saying that the pedaladas fiscais, which is fiscal paddling, I hope I spelled it right, which is practiced by every leader in every democratic society. You cannot possibly be a leader of a country or even a governor of a state or province of any sub-regional division of any functional democracy without practicing fiscal paddling. We do it in our own personal lives quite often, right? We move money around, right? So that's exactly the economic crisis that hit Brazil, right, was really, hit us, the world. Remember 2008? Yeah. It was really, really the world, there was a world crisis. And the economy really slowed down. Brazil being a commodity, primarily a commodity exporting country, Brazil got hit very, very hard. But she then had absolutely within the law, there was no law, nothing in the Constitution that says she couldn't move some money around. And just to give you a sense here of exactly what paddling is, what budgetary paddling. I try to represent as many ideologically leaning newspapers as possible, which is just right there. You can see that allegation that she broke the law by taking out loans from state banks to cover up budget deficit. Right? And so that's pretty much it. She moved money around from some state banks to cover up some holes in the budget, right? The fiscal year was ending, and she had to meet certain responsibilities that the government of Brazil fulfilled. So instead of borrowing money from the IMF, borrowing money from foreign bankers, she actually used Brazilian reserves to actually fill those perfectly legal, perfectly constitutional, right? So before we discuss a little bit in more detail what we just talked about here, it's very important to understand the political culture of Brazil. The Brazilian political culture is what we call corporatist political culture. What does that mean? Corporatist political culture. First of all, the Brazilian system was founded by the Portuguese, right? Which is an extremely feudal system. The Brazilian political culture and political system is very top-down, authoritarian, right, system we call corporatism. In other words, what does that mean, corporatism? It's a system in which socioeconomic groups surround the central authority, right? They surround the central authority, and the word corporatism comes from the Latin corpus, which means body, right? Body. And so the institutions that the Portuguese, the Iberian institutions, were deeply feudal, right? they happened to discover Brazil or the Americas right when the Inquisition, right when the feudal institutions of the Catholic Church was absolutely strong in the Iberian Peninsula. And those were the institutions that they brought to Latin America. So Brazil was born feudal. Latin America was born feudal. Okay? In other words, only the elites, very limited groups, the landed elites, the church, the military, and usually the powerful landowners, right? So after independence, there's a difference between independence and wars of separation. America had an independence war, a revolutionary war. You broke away from England, but at the same time, you created brand new institutions, right? That's a revolution. It's when you create a completely new political system that is compatible to the dynamics, the values, the wishes, hopes, and desire of your people. That's a revolution. You severed, you separated, but also you create new institutions. Well, that never happened in Brazil. That's why I don't like to call the independence wars in Latin America, particularly Brazil, as independence. They're not independence wars. They were wars of separation, in which the landed elites, who are descendants from the Portuguese, right, and the Spanish, now they're going to replace the crown. Now they're going to replace the hierarchy. And nobody can enter the system. The only players are the ones who are already accepted by the body. And in order to enter the system, to be a player, you can't. It's very difficult. They close ranks, so it's not democratic. They saw this hierarchy as natural. It's a natural order of the universe, right? It's a God-given order. It's Eurocentered, and it is very patriarchal, and needless to say, racist. Okay? So, the AfroBrazilians, indigenous people, which, by the way, 60% of the Brazilian people are self-declared, last census, of having some Afro descendants. Okay? So to be Brazilian, that's the soul of Brazil. We are of the soul, the heart and soul of Brazil is African. Has a powerful, and we need to embrace that. But the supermajority of the population simply was invisible. They didn't exist. They were not allowed to be part of the corpo, right, of the body. So they pretty much were absolute. They only become visible, so they wanted a seat at the table, right? But they were absolute, they don't exist. They should know their place in the hierarchy. But these people want a seat at the table, but not serve the table, right? The only place they have is serve as slaves, as subservient people, right, serving the white race. So they want to sit at the table, not serve the table. By the way, this is a early colonial painting of Brazil's slave system. So keep that in mind, that concept. That system is absolutely, it's amazing. 516 years, Brazil was discovered or founded in the 1500s, exactly, like 1500. The 1500 mark there. And ever since, pretty much, the groups that entered the body were carefully measured and selected by this incredible feudal oligarchical elite. Okay? Needless to say that the land was owned by a very small minority of the population, right? So there you have it. Now we're going to talk about, keep that context in mind, right? Well, Brazil now, when we talk about the present day coup d'etat in Brazil, you need to make a distinction. It's a new brand of coup d'etat. It's a completely new brand. It's a modern brand, right? When we think of a coup d'etat, we think what? What do you think of? Oh, there's a coup, right? There's a military overthrow, right? That went there and took over and overthrew the legitimately elected government. That's exactly what happened in 1964. But we were in a very bipolar world, right? The world was very black and white. No pun intended, no black and white picture here, but it was very black and white. We were in a Cold War. It was a bipolar world, and countries, the world had to align. Neutrality was not acceptable, right? If you're not with the United States, you're against the United States, right? If you're not with the Soviet Union, you're against the Soviet Union. You have to pick sides, or otherwise they will make you pick a side. And that's exactly what happened. In Brazil, Brazil had a slight democratic socialist government in 1964, and the United States only saw the world through that communist Red Scare view of the world. And if you are not absolutely 100% aligned with the United States, then Moscow somehow must be behind this. Right? So we rather had a brutal military regime, right? That is 100% committed, right-wing committed to the United States interest. But then a democratic system that, it has a little bit of a center left here. We don't want to run any risk, particularly in its sphere of influence. Latin America is considered the United States, we call geopolitics, backyard, right? The United States sphere of influence, right? They can tolerate maybe far away somewhere, maybe some democratic socialism, but not in our backyard, right? So the United States always saw Brazil and Latin America as its backyard. What happens there is in the interest of the United States, and the United States always reserved the right to interfere in the internal affairs of Latin American countries that are not necessarily 100% aligned with the United States, whether it's communism or not. The coup d'etat in 2016 it's a parliamentary coup, although Brazil is not a parliamentary system, it's a federal system, just like the United States, the three powers and all of that, but a coup d'etat. But it went through certain clear stages. It was a progression, right? There's some stages going on here. So that's what we're talking about here. So all of these corporate elitist groups really converged, massively converged, to really put a stop to Dilma Rousseff's government. The idea was this cannot go on. Now, the body became more sophisticated, but it operates under a very hierarchical, top-down, elitist system, right? So the problem with the 21st century, the 20th century, after the Cold War, we had to deal with the issue of democracy, right? We won the Cold War, right? So what is the excuse for not having a legitimately elected president in power? What is the overarching doctrine to keep them from staying in power, right? So they have to worry about the facade, right? The elites in Brazil are very Eurocentered, very racist. They care about how the North America and Europe sees them. And they have an incredible inferiority complex. In other words, okay, the people that we want to be accepted, they look towards Europe, right? It's a very Eurocentered elite. But guess what? Europe has moved on, right? Portugal has moved on. Spain has moved on. These countries are no longer feudal. They have absolute democratic reforms in their judicial system, electoral system. These are full-blown functional democracies, right? But these are the continent that they kowtow to. Well, You don't want them to think that you are a backwarded feudal lord, that you are. Right? Hence the dichotomy of the international image and the private image. We want, in Brazil, we even have a saying, we have a Brazilian here. Any other Brazilians here? Para inglês ver.
Yeah.
Right? Para inglês ver. We want to have a Brazil. Inglês means English, for the English to see, which is a catch-all word for European, the British Empire, the European. We don't want them to think that we are backwarded, feudal, ignorant society. So how do you keep that facade? Now, we don't look like ignorant, but at the same time, you're going to keep the system that we've been living under for 516 years. Ha! Give a veneer of legality. Give it a veneer, a very thin facade that the whole impeachment of Dilma Rousseff went through a very clear constitutional ritual. It was a ritualistic, and the Constitution of Brazil was written in 1988. It's a democratic constitution, right? Therefore, it is democracy at work, right? And then that's what the world didn't see during the Olympics. It was a farce. Why? What is it that these guys are afraid of? They're afraid of these two individuals and the Workers' Party. Partido dos Trabalhadores, the Workers' Party. The Workers' Party started out as a simple union, okay? It started out with this man, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Who is this guy? This guy is a man he comes from a migrant, impoverished family from the northeastern Brazil. If you know anything about Brazilian history, the northeastern part of Brazil is extremely impoverished, and we have a massive internal migration from the north to the south. These are the people who are the heavy laborers of Brazil, and they moved down south, which is a more prosperous region. He comes from that, and extremely impoverished. He's the seventh son of a family of 8, single mother, right? These people were extremely poor. He was a factory worker. He was a metal worker. He learned how to be a metal worker, and he got a job in the industrial center of Latin America in São Paulo. And he becomes the union leader, right? So the union that he started becomes a full-blown party later on. This man was elected with landslide elections, okay? And he was a labor leader, and as a labor leader, this man was right in the middle of the military coup. The military regime was in power in 1964, and they didn't leave until 1985. I came to America in 1984. Okay, I was born in 1962. They came to power in 1964, and I waited and I waited, and I thought, okay, these guys are not going to leave. So I said, I'm going to try my luck in America, right? And that's this guy. This guy is an incredible phenomenon. This guy is a phenomenon, right? Why? What he accomplished is truly amazing. He, in the middle of the military dictatorship, paralyzed Brazil with a general strike. Okay? The son of an illiterate mother from one of the poorest regions in Brazil did something with himself. He was a factory worker, he learned a skill, and then he organized in the middle of a brutal military regime. Well, this guy, paralyzed, he managed to get 3.5 million people, general strike of 3.5 million workers, in the middle of a very brutal dictatorship, in which people disappeared, people were being tortured, killed, right? And this guy organized his first strike, his first union meeting to call for a strike. He was doing in front of the union building office there, and then he thought maybe 5,000 people would show up. 90,000 people showed up. They had to walk to a soccer stadium of 80,000. The capacity was 80,000. Then they had to actually be in the streets, right? Without a microphone, without any speaker. He talked to almost 100,000 people and asked them democratically to vote for general strike or not. They put a table there. Meanwhile, the very same people after that strike were being arrested without trial, without a lawyer, and many of them were never to be seen again. He himself was jailed. In 1980, then the union, the force of what they conquered here was truly amazing. You couldn't ignore it. Became the party, the Workers' Party. Right? Dilma Rousseff is the other person that member of the party around the same time. When she was 19 years of age, she was arrested by the military regime, tortured and raped 3.5 years in a row, simply for opposing the military regime. And her inquisitors were covering their eyes, right? But that's the picture, and she never betrayed any of her friends that were opposing the military. The idea was to get her to squeak. What do you guys say?
Squeal.
Yeah. She never. And let me tell you something, there are a lot of guys that by the second day of their torture, like, Johnny and Mary, she never gave anybody. This woman is known for being tough and fierce and loyal as a nail. You think an impeachment is going to bring her down? 3.5 years of torture. And that's a famous picture. Coração valente means what?
Courageous heart.
Help me out, Vanya. Coração valente?
Courageous heart.
Brave
Heart.
Coração valente. Right? So, what is it? From 2002 all the way to 2016, the Workers' Party it was unbeatable. They were unstoppable. Why? Because they actually governed. The Workers' Party, in spite of the red, did I scare my boss away already, Carly? Right? Hey! You're there. Oh, I feel better now, Carly. How am I doing, Card?
You're doing great. I'm just standing. I'm stretching my legs.
Thank you. Right? In spite of the red, star, we might think of this very ideological Marxist system. It's not. It is the most pragmatic, center to the left party in Brazil. Everybody thought that whenever Lula came to power, right? Oh my God, we're going to turn Marxist, but he was actually praised by the United States and the world for being such a pragmatic, right? He was there. He never forgot where he came from, and he said, "I don't want to see Brazilians go hungry anymore." And what is it that we can do as a society to make sure that that happens? He ended child labor, food insecurity with several programs, public health, in fact, vaccinations, real gains in minimum wages, infrastructure, education, housing, what him and Dilma, right, accomplished is truly to this day considered the world. The world is just in awe of what these guys accomplished. If you look at this is the World Bank, hardly a left-wing organization, right? The World Bank. Look at this. This is a shot here, so a screenshot. So look at this. You look at the stats. We went from Brazil in 1990. Somewhere between 32, 33 million people going hungry, impoverished, living in slums to by 2015 to less than 7.5 million people. These guys accomplished in, well, how many years? 2002? In 14 years? Yeah. In 14 years, what the so-called enlightened white European elites couldn't accomplish in 516. What it is called political will, right? Look at this. The GDP of Brazilians in 1990, look at this, in thousands of dollars, it was 5,000. By the time Dilma was, I mean, these guys brought it to 15,000, then we hit a little economic crisis, but it was steadily going up, 15,000. I mean, look at this, a decade. A little over a decade. It's truly amazing. And you look, the graph is climbing right here when he comes to power in 2002. It just takes off, right? And the numbers are incredible. What did they do? They didn't do anything crazy, they did simple things. They created some social programs like Bolsa Família, which is a system of feeding families, Brazilian families, but always focusing on the woman, the mothers. And that is the same system being utilized by the United Nations right now, and every African country are using the programs. Brazil was leading the world in the third world countries on how to get out of that extreme poverty, right? Always focusing on the mother, which is a very interesting incentive. You get some basic foods every month to feed the family with one condition: if you put your kid to school. You have to put your kids going to the school, and it was not a stigmatized welfare. It is a system in which you have a card. You actually don't have that stigma of food stamps and all of that. And it was truly amazing. Why? Because Brazil, like many other patriarchal countries, have a serious problem with absenteeism of fathers, And they created, in 14 years, 18 federal universities. It took almost 400 years for the elites to create the first Brazilian university. In 14 years, these guys created 18 federal universities, and I put a very special one here, the ABC University, because that's my hometown, and that brings me to tears every time I see that. Because if that thing was there in 1984, I probably wouldn't be here, right? Open the doors to university in the most remote rural area of the Amazon. I mean, anybody could go to college, university now in Brazil. They created what we call the ProUni and FIES, which are programs that give scholarship for people who are making ProUni, any family that was making less than one minimum wage. In Brazil, minimum wages are monthly payments, one minimum wage. You would have 50 to 100% full scholarship to go to either a private college or university, or assistance to go to a state-run university. The numbers are just like, look at this, 2 million college scholarships. Just for the ProUni, which is the lowest of the lowest of the lowest, and they happen to be the darkest of the darkest of the darkest. Never have we seen, by 2012, we had 500,000 medical doctors. 75% of these medical doctors were black. They're not serving the table now, they're sitting at the table, right? Indigenous people, right? Never have we seen that before. Flying airplanes, how dare them, right? Universities, they created universities really close to the Argentinian border, following that Bolivarian principle of continental and South American unity. We've been divided, right? The idea of having a more united South America. Bad deal for the United States, right? A program called My House, My Life, Minha Casa, Minha Vida, has benefited 10 million people left the favelas. Not too shabby for 14 years of actually giving it a try. A guy who doesn't even have a high school degree, just have a technical degree. Not too shabby, right? More than 10 million houses, people were benefited. I want to translate it here, I'm sorry, I should have typed it, but 2.6 million homes have been delivered, right? 1.5 million were in construction up until April, when she was kicked out. And they contracted more than 4 million homes. Altogether, these guys have created decent housing with infrastructure, sewage, running water to more than 10 million people. They are humble homes, but these are homes based prorated on their income, and the people are paying back. Some of these houses are only $50 a month, no more than that. It's truly amazing what these people created. And in the end, when they finish paying their loans, these people are paying. It's not free home housing. They have some very specific stipulation. Education, you gotta educate your children, you gotta do a certain things, right? Certain things in order to survive. But then at the end, if they effectively pay that, it becomes their private property. The American dream, right? And again, focus a lot on women, right? So, those are the domestic things. Now, in terms of, sorry, can I go over 5 minutes? Okay. In terms of international, Brazil created the Mercosur, which is the South American coalition of countries. Will be like the European Union for South America. The BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. We kept peacekeeping missions in Haiti. We created very close ties with Africa, particularly the Portuguese-speaking African countries, Mozambique, Angola, Cape Verde, and other places. Really strong ties, and they are adopting the Brazilian development model to eradicate poverty in Africa. United Nations still, if you go to the official website of the United Nations, they're using the Brazilian model. That used to be Brazil, right? That used to be our model. They were very strong supporters of the creation of the Palestinian state. They opened 32 new embassies, and they managed to lead Latin America to reject the FTAA, which is the Free Trade Agreement of the Americas, right? Which is a neoliberal thing. That was pretty much. But notice that Lula came to power in 2002. What was happening in America in 2002? Huh?
War on terror.
War on terror.
That's right.
The giant was distracted, right?
Yeah.
The giant was distracted, and that's when we look push forward, because the United States always interfered when we start straying away. The idea was to really create horizontal relationships, right, with Africa and so we took advantage of that. The war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan, the giant of the North was distracted, right? The BRICS, it's truly amazing. The BRICS in Brazil, right? BRICS again, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, which are the emerging powers, right? Dilma meeting with his leader, right? Brazil created the G20 of the developing world, right? Truly amazing. And the first conference was in Mexico that irked the heck out of the United States, right? And the development bank that the BRICS created was not based on neoliberal capitalist terms, but it was really what they're saying here. The current financing and investment pattern are inadequate to meet the investment needs of the vast majority of the human population. So what we have here is a rejection of the IMF, a rejection of the so-called neoliberal agenda that is really spearheaded by the United States. So what you have is this bigger than life popularity. You cannot defeat these individuals. You cannot defeat the Workers' Party. And the corporatist elites is like, okay, what are we gonna do? We gotta keep this guy. And they tried to beat the Workers' Party on the ballot, the elites. But this Lula left power with an 85% approval rating. Okay, this is no small feat. So what happened, guys? Look at President Obama called him, he's my man. Here's my man, right here. I love this guy. He was more popular than the Pope. More popular than the Beatles. And the Beatles were more popular than Jesus Christ, so that's okay. It's truly amazing. So what happened? Okay, what happened? What happened? These guys could not be stopped, and the right never came out with a counter plan. They want to go back to that corporatist triangle. And what happened? Elections happened. The PSDB, which is the party of the elites, regardless of the name PSDB, which is the Brazilian Democratic Party, it's not democratic, and it's not socialist, and I question their Brazilian loyalties. They couldn't win. Look at this. This guy won one state, and I still don't know how in the heck he won that state. Right? Then this guy. Then you start seeing the machine was kicking in, right? The mass media was starting to kick in, but he still won with 61%. Dilma, because it's only a two-term presidential system, she was pretty much the anointed candidate that Lula, endorsed. And she wins her first term with 56% against the same guy, right? And this guy here, Aécio Neves, who, by the way, is known for being involved in cocaine traffic, right? That's when the first red flag, he refused to concede the election. Sound familiar?
Oh, yeah. Oh, great. He's just so.
Right? He refused to concede, although he won. And they start questioning the legitimacy of the thing. Geopolitics and the American giant now is recovered. We survived that decade, that horrible decade, right? And now you have the so-called the spying. We found out that the NSA was spying on Brazil and Germany. Electronic spying. So in 2013, and spying. Every conversation that the Brazilian president was having, every top secret, they were actually spying, and therefore, Rousseff was going to was invited. Once a year, the president of the United States invites one country, a leader of one country, to have the incredible state dinner. I don't know if you know about the state dinner, but the state dinner, it is one with charm. We throw all the whatever, right? It is truly, truly trying to woo whoever is visiting once a year. And Brazil was going to be that country in 2013. She cancels it. And Angela Merkel is mad as heck, right? Why? What was it? What is it that Brazil was so enticing about Brazil? Petrobras. Petrobras is the petroleum company, state-run company, and they discovered one of the largest reserves of oil in the world. They were actually about to apply it into the OPEC. Okay, and it's deep water, and Petrobras discovered this incredible reserve, and they developed the best technology for deep water. I'm not a geologist, but the pre-salt. The pre-salt is 7,200 feet deep. And Brazil is the only country that has the technology to go even deeper without a oil spill. They won award after award for technological advancements on that area. They estimate conservatively somewhere between 800 to 1 trillion barrels. Okay, and that was going to be used for one thing and one thing only. Wouldn't you know, social fund for health and education. Now the United States want to, and the international community want to grab a hold of that. And that's where they really were eyeing. This is the crown jewel of the future of Brazil. That was really going to challenge and change the balance of power in Latin America, without a doubt, right? And it's the staking home. On top of that, Brazil produces very cheaply, by comparison, ethanol. So Brazil became energy independent. America produces more ethanol than the United States, but it is from beets, and it's more expensive to produce. Brazil has the comparative advantage of the climate for sugarcane, and boy, they can produce ethanol abundantly, right? The next thing that I'm going to do it, and I'll try to rush it, is this, the corruption scandal. That's the second red flag that we start seeing here. Is all of a sudden you see this Operation Car Wash, which is a federal police, which is the FBI of Brazil, investigating more than 150 members of the Brazilian Congress that were involved in a corruption scandal involved with Petrobras. And it's truly amazing what was happening, right? And actually they're getting close to 200, right? And all of the major parties were involved in that, including PT. But by comparison, PT was the least one that money laundered, I guess, the least of all those parties. The PMDB, the Speaker of the House, of the lower house of Brazil, the President of the Brazilian Senate, and, won't you know, the Vice President of Brazil were all involved in massive corruption. Aécio Neves was a candidate for the conservatives there, right? $4 million only from Petrobras. Okay, that doesn't include other contracts that quid pro quo things. The guy who ran for president of Brazil from the conservative, $23 million in Swiss banks. Okay, the list goes on and on and on. This guy, the president of the House of Representatives, right, the Speaker of the House, actually has so many secret Swiss banks, and he lied under oath that he had Swiss banks accounts, that he pretty much go like, you know, the man was corrupt to the bone, right? He was giving an interview and people start, you know, there was a protest that threw dollars to his face, right? And the bottom line here is that he's channeled money to all the little parties. And then he positioned himself as the Speaker of the House, and then the Lava Jato, the car wash, kicks in, and he goes like, oh, I think I'm gonna go to prison, because we don't even know how much he has stolen. They are putting together somewhere between $50 to $100 million, right? But officially, so far, $5 million in Swiss banks. And he becomes the Speaker of the House. He goes to the President of Brazil, who has never committed a crime. To this day, she lives in the very same house very simple home. There's no corruption from her, and says, you better put a stop on that car wash operation. And she said, no. You know, oh, I'm gonna go to prison, then don't be a crook. He said, you better stop. I won't. Well, guess what? I'm the Speaker of the House, and I'm the one who can initiate the impeachment. And he has every single member, right? He has something on them. He has everything documented. He passed all of that corruption money, so he knew he had the votes to impeach her, and he did. Because she simply wouldn't stop a probe on the massive corruption. Because she wasn't afraid of it, right?
He's in jail now, right?
Well, for now,
Yeah.
right? And that's what you have. You have that. You have this ridiculous thing, right? You have him presiding over the impeachment hearing, and all of these guys, notice, all men, all white, all corrupt, voted for her impeachment to save themselves from going to prison. That's what the American media has, international media in general, right? This guy, the federal judge that oversees the Lava Jato, is a ridiculous, corrupt individual. He's not corrupt, but he is saying, oh yeah, corruption. But only PT is corrupt. The other parties are. He pretty much filed, put it away their files and say, no, I don't see any corruption with PSDB. I don't see any corruption with PSDB. He is now because of pressure. Some pressure of the valiant, brave people from the very beginning that understood that was a farce. And they were fooled. The people who supported impeachment that were in the streets were absolutely fooled. Massa de manobra, as we say in Brazil. This guy's receiving awards from the mass, mega, centralized media. This guy is Brazilian Citizen Kane. He's the owner of the largest network. He was even on Time magazine. The man who is overseeing the fight against corruption in Brazil. But the problem is he's part of the corpo. He's part of the body. Okay, and he pretty much, what he was doing here is using the excuse of fighting corruption to actually demonize and make the Workers' Party an illegal party, to destroy Lula and PT, to go back as they were before. That's the truth. The guy goes to concerts with the elites, take selfies, they have t-shirts. If you see a black person, please raise your arm here, okay? He saved the year, right? He always presenting him as a hero, a serious man, right? But he's seen as a Savanaroa, as a medieval feudal judge who is really out there to get rid of a certain social movement and party that was really completely changing the superstructure of the Brazilian political society, which was very feudal, right? He was seen, the Brazilian criminal system is extremely feudal. It's founded on the inquisitorial, is that correct? Inquisitorial system of the Portuguese. The investigating judge is also the trial judge, right? And he has all the power to detain people without bail, hold them indeterminately until they get a confession. Sounds like torture to me. Confessions are very, very questionable. You cannot rely on those confessions because they hold people that were accused of a crime indefinitely. And we don't know the conditions, right? That's what we're dealing with here. These confessions are not reliable, and those are the plea bargaining of those confessions, and I'll stop in 2 minutes, these confessions are actually given out of desperation, and they are throwing people under the bus. What they want is, they want one name. Did I hear Lula? Did you hear Lula? Oh, well, no, it was Eduardo Cunha, it was so and so and so. No, I think I heard Lula. And he has nothing on him. Nothing. Lula created, invented corruption in Brazil. He says, the prosecutor in Moro said, we don't have any proof, but we do have the conviction that he was the ringleader. They're not even subtle, right? In the media, these are just a fraction of the equivalent of the Time magazine. Decapitated head of Lula, snakes, they're not even subtle, right? And they always like to imitate the mass media of America, right? Oh, by the way, do you like the tail?
Yeah.
Very, very, very subtle, right? And that's what we have. What are they afraid? Lula in 2018. To this date, his approval rating, and by the way, the polls that are coming out are all from the right-wing organizations. The whatever you want to call it, the elite organization, and even those show 50% approval rating. So the question here is, if they don't arrest him on false accusation, they will fatigue the people. They will bombard the people with demonization, so he won't run for president, because he can under the Constitution. He can serve 2 terms in a row.
Why is he still alive? Why don't they take him out? It's amazing that he's still...
Do you guys want to help me to answer that question?
Martyrdom? Maybe martyrdom? Yeah.
You want to really, really, really destabilize that society. You want to see a civil war.
Right.
You get this guy. Okay? And that's why. Because if they had the proof that this guy is a corrupt, and he still lives in he lives not too far from my house in São Bernardo do Campo. Same humble apartment. They have nothing on him, and that's what we're dealing with here right now in Brazil. And if he returns, he will be the next president. So they want to avoid at any cost. Where are the people who are hitting the pots and pans in the streets? Nowhere to be seen. Why? Because they were manipulated. Now they realize that, oops, right? But they don't have the decency to actually say, yeah, I made a mistake. Because the popularity is there, right? So that's what we're having here, and so on and so forth. The organization that really triggered that pro-impeachment was a group of very young guys, by and large white, except for this guy here. The MPL, a very right-wing, we still don't know exactly who is funding this group, but they're the ones who are going to the streets and creating havoc in Brazil. And initially, they're the ones who started this impeachment movement, and then when people realized they were being manipulated, it was too late. And racist, the sign here says, why didn't you kill her? Them all, meaning the PT, when the military had a chance. That was the pro-impeachment people, right? Always using red, green, and yellow, jingoism, and very misogynist. These are the guys who impeached the very few honest people in Brazil. These are the guys who are being all investigated for corruption. And that you have it. Corruption equals PT. PT equals corruption. Get PT. And everybody else, is so honest, right? And what it is a witch hunt against the only party that dared to govern for all. And who funds these people? Now, do we have real documented proof of that? No. But we do know that those individuals went to international conferences, right-wing conferences that were funded by the Koch brothers and associates. So follow the money, right? Deep throat, follow the money. And why? Because the Presalt reserve needs refineries, and that's how the Koch brothers made their money.
Talk about evil, there you go.
Right. And want to hear another one? One more? The WikiLeaks, secret WikiLeaks, remember? Julian Assange, Edward Snowden later on. They found out that the vice president of Brazil, who by the way was a member of Congress at the time, was actually an informant for the American embassy. And then when he overthrows Dilma and comes to power, guess what we have? Oh, no, never mind. Oh, why did I do that? No. How did I get that out of here? Oh, here. Well, there we go. I'm just going to give you.
O governo dos Estados Unidos espionou a presidente Dilma.
Dilma Rousseff como alvo direto de espionagem da NSA. As manifestações.
After the coup, Joe Biden goes to Brazil and meets with the Michel Temer.
As manifestações que ocorrem no país. Quero contribuir para a construção de uma ampla e profunda reforma política.
A disputa das eleições presidenciais no Brasil terminou com a vitória mais apertada da história.
Pois é, vamos, portanto, para as ruas.
De espionagem da NSA.
It's never been a good bet to bet against the United States of America.
Pudemos conversar muito sobre temas de interesse do Brasil e dos Estados Unidos.
Did you see him laughing? What is the new illegitimate president saying? Oh, we were here to talk about the national interests of Brazil. And Joe Biden breaks, Uncle Joe, right? He breaks out laughing. He goes like, you were an informant. You betrayed your country. You were an informant against your country to the embassy of the United States. And you're talking about a Brazilian national interest? Even I have to laugh at that. And that's exactly, it's a, what do you call it?
Farce.
Conversar muito sobre temas de interesse do Brasil e dos Estados Unidos.
Dilma Rousseff adiou.
Right? And I want your personal. Here's the citizen kings of Brazil, and the misogyny portraying Dilma as an irrational, postmenopausal, evil woman. They're very subtle, by the way. Right? And, I mean, even the president of Argentina, a woman named Cristina de Kirchner, look at this, always unflattering portrayal of these incredibly intelligent, capable women. And what we saw was the MBL all over Brazil. Were you there in Brazil? Vanya, when that was happening? All over Brazil, that MBL, which is a right-wing, God knows where the money comes from, were distributing stickers of Dilma Rousseff and And by the way, when these men were voting for her impeachment, I told you Brazil is not for beginners. I told you. Don't you tell me I didn't warn you, right? I told you Brazil is not a country of serious men. Right. True statesman, a true statesman saw it in 1964. And these men, when they were voting yes for the impeachment, were seeing and this is documented by so many international media particularly, they will go to their phones and say, the yes vote was to impeach her, but my heart's for you, my mistress. These are the people who actually talk about morality and, you know, the Brazilians, they dedicated their vote to the Brazilian family, to the traditional values of the Brazilian family, and then they would talk to their mistresses. It's truly, this man is Bolsonaro, a fascist, who actually, when he said yes for the impeachment, this man thanked immensely and profusely the torturer, the people who tortured Dilma Rousseff and raped her. I'm not an expert. All you need to do is have a decent heart to understand from the get-go this thing was a farce. And so what we have here then is a fragmented country, and the result so far has been total gag laws in schools. They eliminated sociology. Every social sciences were eliminated just last week. The constitutional amendment 241, which is eliminated social science. You cannot talk about politics in public schools. You cannot talk about sociology, philosophy. Okay? But we're democracy. The ritual was very democratic, right? Gag laws, they froze the entire budget for education and health for 20 years. And they sold the Petrobras, the pride and joy of the Brazilian society, Brazilian people, right, for the technological advances, to pretty much the cheapest bidder. And more than 1,000 public schools are occupied as we speak. You don't see that on CBS News, right? More than 1,000 federal institutes in federal universities are occupied. Brazil is, in fact, in a military state. The difference of treatment towards the people who are voting for the impeachment, Brazil does not have a civil police, it's a military police. If you are white and pro-impeachment, you take selfies with the military police.
Oh my God.
I told you Brazil is not for beginners, right? Black people, incarceration of blacks is through the roof. We saw massive assaults on transgender homosexuals in Brazil. If you are white, look at this. Isn't that sweet?
Yeah.
Isn't that sweet?
That's so precious. Oh. Oh.
Always wearing the national patriotic flag. Sounds familiar, sounds like being imported right-wing model from somewhere. And look at this. The first time in the history of not even the military that actually an all-male white, and they downsized, well, because it's all about the free market, right? Balance the budget, sounds familiar? Right? They downsized government from 33 ministries or cabinets to 22, and they gave the military police 31% pay raise. The federal judges 41% pay raise, but education has been frozen. But corruption is exclusive to the Workers' Party. This is what do you call a nanny who was pro-PT, anti-Dilma, was forced to go to work as a nanny in a anti-Dilma protest, which really embodies, and the sign here says, "Justice for Brazil." Right? It's a facade, it's a farce. Unemployment's through the roof. Petrobras, 62% of its 276,000 jobs are gone. The technology that was a national top secret information now is being given to foreign corporations. BRICS. Guess who's not holding hands? Brazil's losing respectability in the international community. And look at Timur. Yeah. Dilma was always here, right in the middle, right? Not anymore. And this is the present state of Brazil. Moral, TV Globo, the Tucanos, that's the mascot of the right wing. Now they're calling the Tucanistan. Brazil is the Tucanistan. And I'm sorry, guys, but I overextended. I'm sorry, baby.
No.
Can you forgive me? So,